I'm starting to feel like I'm a lot more open to being fetishized. Don't cut this so it sounds like I'm saying something crazy.
Today, you'll be hearing a series of hot takes submitted by all of you, and you will have to decide whether you agree or disagree.
Okay.
I hate to be the first trans guy that someone has dated.
Define dating.
I'm pretty set here.
Yeah. I don't like explaining myself very much. I would prefer just to date somebody with experience dating trans guys. I also don't like to feel like an experiment, like a little romp to trans town and then I go back and do whatever I'm doing.
Kinda always was the type of person to like to be a person's first experience. But I get what you're saying when they go back, you know what I mean? But I'd rather them go back than to go to a trans man. It's weird with me. I don't know.
Hot take. I'm a little bit in the middle. I think it really depends on the person specifically. When it comes to cisgender people, I'm less inclined to be like their first transgender experience. It feels like a lot of fetishization a lot of the time. I like to be in T for T relationships. I date other trans people and that feels good for me. And I feel much more comfortable if I happen to be the first trans person that another trans person has dated because there's still a level of understanding and curiosity.
I kind of feel like I'm in the middle.
I'll scooch
Yeah,
towards the middle.
Yeah, come on in, bring it on in.
We're a little more in the middle.
Especially like when you said like
Yeah.
the part, because I date trans women too. I have a daughter by a trans woman. So I get what you're saying when you went there. We're both transitioning. We're both, learning this, doing this thing together. You know what I'm saying? And it's more comfortable sometimes than with a cisgender person because it's like you were saying, you just want to get in a relationship and you click and you already know what it's doing. So I get it.
I have dated somebody who was early in their transition. I don't always appreciate being a teacher in those scenarios. I have felt used or like an experiment in those scenarios before. But I have had instances where like it's been really nice helping somebody come into their self.
I've also experienced, well, I'm a lesbian, but like, let's give it a little try. Not my thing. I've done too much. I'm not a teacher.
I feel like in my history, I used to break in a lot of straight women. Now I break in a lot of gay guys. Eventually, when I was dating women, I got tired of that. Perhaps at some point, I will grow tired of this as well. However, I'm not at that point yet. So if anybody feels a little curious, you know where to find me.
I'm gonna need like a written letter of recommendation from a trans guy before you're able to date me. That way I know you're gonna treat me right.
My hot take is many people pursue trans men for sex instead of partnership.
What kind of people are we talking about here?
I don't know. I'll dip into the red on this one a little bit.
I think a lot of people really fetishize trans masculine people, trans people in general. We are the most heavily searched person on different porn sites. People are constantly, trying to entertain us. I have been transitioning for like over 15 years. I've looked kind of young, but I'm old in trans years. I've just had a lot of experiences with so many, especially men, because I'm a queer trans man as well. And so I've just had a lot of experience with queer men pursuing me for sexual advances, but there's no follow through in terms of actually trying to plan out dates, trying to take someone seriously.
I got a lot of sad men knocking at my door.
That's what I'm saying.
As somebody who sleeps with a lot of other people's husbands, sometimes I think those husbands like me a little too much. And I'm like, does your man know that you're saying this to me? You kiss your man with that mouth?
For me, that just comes off as obsession. I feel like it leans into that fetishization sometimes. I've got a lot of men that have expressed like they love and adore me, but I don't really feel like genuine partnership happening. Like you said, those are people's husbands.
I also date men, and I'm just like, I don't know if the lack of commitment has to do with me being trans as much as it does kind of just the way queer men date, which is on the apps and on to the next.
What's the biggest red flag?
For me, hyper-masculinizing me. Because I feel like I kind of talk a little feminine, I wear makeup. I remember being on a date with this girl and she kept going, oh, you're so masculine with your big muscles. And I was like, no, I don't like you, actually. And I have like some stubble. It's just like, I love your beard. No, you don't.
Yeah, that will definitely tip me off is when someone specifically is like, I love your beard. You have an amazing beard. I love your top surgery scars. They're amazing. I'm like, aren't they? I mean, they look good, but I'm just like, why do you love my top surgery
Okay,
scars?
some people here have amazing beards.
Or like the phrase like, oh, you're the best of both worlds.
That's immediate no.
When people are like, oh, your dick is so big, your dick is so big. I mean, 3 inches is big in my community. What did I say?
I mean,
Oh,
it's
no,
just
no.
3 inches, everyone.
It's the emphasis on the size.
Yes.
I'm starting to feel like I'm a lot more open to being fetishized. My red flag is if they have exes or other partners who look just like me. Cis
Like
or
an
trans.
Asian?
Yeah, Asian. If he has an Asian twink husband, I'm like, okay, like I see what's happening.
no.
It's less about the transness for me, and a lot more about Asian fetish.
It is really a thing.
So if someone comes around the two of us, then I'm gonna be like, no. I feel this is not gonna come out right. Don't cut this so it sounds like I'm saying something crazy. I feel a lot of agency in fetishizing other people. Not like in a messed up way. If I'm hooking up with a gay guy, I'm like, okay, you're objectifying me, I'm objectifying you. To me, it's just an equal part of the transaction. And like, I understand that's not how power structures work in this world, but as far as I'm concerned, in my room for about an hour and a half in the hours between midnight and 3 a.m., that's not the real world. And to me, it is equal.
My hot take, a good relationship is better when you live separately.
There we go.
I just feel like, you need time to miss me, right? We can't just be waking up, you're next to me, going to bed, you're next to me. Nah.
It's the Whoopi Goldberg thing. I don't want a man in my house.
I was in a long distance relationship with someone for 2.5 years, and then they were moving to the same city I lived in. And they initially were like, oh, so I'll move in with you. And I'm like, we've never lived in the same city. Like, we gotta start, like, you have to have your own, like, people and interests and hobbies. I think it could work living together if you've been together for a bit, but I don't think you should be in a rush despite, the price of rent in New York City.
It's a space thing, and I don't like people all on top of me all the time, and I want to get to miss you. I think that's a better way of learning each other. Maybe further down the line, like if it really gets serious like that, we just need to take our time. Maybe we'll have better lasting relationships.
I think T for T dating is not inherently better than T for C.
I agree, technically. We want to be technical. You said inherently. That was the key word. I don't think that, people are inherently anything based on their gender alone, whether that be cisgender, transgender. I personally have a preference for T relationships. I've had much better experiences in those situations than not. I also recognize that there are some wonderful cisgender people in relationships with trans people who love them.
This is so diplomatic.
Well, it is. You asking me, I'm like, this is why. But if the question was my preference, then I'd be way over there.
There are so many different identities that people can hold, so many different levels that people can connect with each other on. For me, having a shared gender identity doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna have a whole lot in common with somebody. I just think it's more complicated than that.
It's the inherently that's getting me. Like, T for T is a preference, but I've also had good relationships with non-trans people. That isn't the problem. And also, there are a bunch of trans people who suck. Just many people suck. So we can't just go by whether they're trans or not.
And that's equality.
Yeah.
We can also be bad.
It's just one line of identity. It's the same to me as saying middle class for middle class or white for white. There's all kinds of reasons why a relationship could work or not work. Not always, and not here necessarily, but sometimes when people go really hard on T for T, it's because that's their main marginalized identity. And I'm sort of yeah, I can see how that feels safer for you.
Okay.
That's real. That's so real.
But I don't really see what me and a white trans person necessarily have so much more in
In
common.
common, yeah. That's so real.
true.
That's so real. I'm in my trans puberty, so to speak. So I feel I'm like 16, to be exact, 16-year-old boy. So I feel like I've just started having T4T experiences. So for me, my sample pool for cis people are way bigger. But from the T4T experience I've had, one thing that I really appreciate about those experiences is that it teaches a lot about myself.
Good.
As I'm coming into my own gender identity, my own masculinity, exploring what it means to be transmasc for me, I become more comfortable with dating outside of just women. This is also another thing that's great about dating in New York, is that you just have beautiful people of every genre, and it makes exploring and discovering yourself easy.
I also think that our group really represented a lot of different dating styles, from like monogamy to non-monogamy to like dating men, women, non-binary people, trans people, and cis people. So it makes sense to me that it was split.
My hot take is that I prefer meeting people on dating apps.
That's crazy.
Don't get me wrong, I love a meet cute. Like I love meeting someone out in the wild and you just kind of click like at Body Hack or Doll Invasion. I think people rag on dating apps a lot, and I do appreciate them as a trans person for one, because they save me having to have an uncomfortable conversation. And two, just like on the basis of hookup, like you can get a lot out of the way of like, this is what I'm into, this is what I'm looking for. Saves you time. They save me having to have a conversation that can be difficult in person, that I don't know how someone's going to respond to, how it could affect my safety. Also one that sometimes I forget to have, which can lead to some complicated scenarios later.
I had an interesting experience recently of going to a gay sex party for the first time. And this thing kept happening where guys were interested in me because they couldn't tell I was trans. And then they figured it out, and then they were not interested anymore. That's cruising, so like that's fine, it happens. But I was like, this doesn't happen online. And like I specifically have been staying online this whole time, kind of to avoid this situation, because I don't want to surprise anybody.
No shade, the internet is very curated, apps are very curated. Someone can look like a total catch online, and then you meet them in person and the vibe is just not there. Sometimes they look better in real life, you know, it's just like, there's something really special about like seeing someone in person for the first time and being like, actually no, now I gotta get your socials because now I gotta like get into you more.
To be clear, I'm not saying I have a passion for filling out Hinge props. That's not.
I've had great dating app experiences. I've met friends, I've met foes, I've met lovers, great. But there's something about like meeting somebody in person, y'all be spitting game, you know what I mean? And you can catch a vibe, it's hot. You see somebody across the bar, they come up to you, you come up to them. This slow building of tension throughout the conversation. Oh, your hands touch. Oh, you're holding hands. Oh, now you're kissing.
So with my ex, right, we met on Hinge. So whenever people asked us, oh, how did you all meet? And we were like, oh, on Hinge. I'm like, this is the least romantic, least interesting story that you could tell, right? When I tell you how I met my significant other, next time I have one, it's gonna be a one-car-way film. Do you know what I'm saying? It's gonna be cinema.
I'm old-fashioned.
Where do you meet people in person?
Well, I've been in a long relationship for now, so right now, so when these apps and stuff came about, I was already in a relationship, but I know people hit me up all the time in the inboxes and stuff, like for WhatsApp and all these other apps, and I don't know what they're talking about.
Okay, so he has found love and he's highly desired, all right.
Yeah, the app thing just probably wouldn't work for me. I'd probably be in a lot of trouble. Even if I wasn't in a relationship, I'd just rather do that, go out and meet somebody. Social media, I don't know, it's just not my thing.
I think people often weaponize masculinity against trans men.
Should we do a pyramid?
I can't explain myself yet.
I wouldn't say I have a desire to start. I wouldn't say I have an inclination.
I feel like it's about to get real.
Yeah.
No, this is real.
It's like people project their expectation, assumption, and trauma from patriarchy onto us, right? And mind you, I also experienced patriarchy.
Yes,
I
yes.
grew up fully in patriarchy, being oppressed. Like I understand, so I'm not just like a cis man. I'm not socialized that way. I think it is particularly hard to find your relationship with masculinity, especially when you're young, to embrace it, to learn how to embody it when you have your own trauma from it, you know? And I think at that point is a very vulnerable point. And sometimes, just like say, not everybody in the community are safe and people exploit that. You know, people use it against us as a way to manipulate us, to control us, to have power over us, to create narratives about us, and just to weaponize this really precious thing that we work so hard to become. As a community especially, we want to overcorrect patriarchy, obviously. You know, we want to uplift our women, we want to amplify their voice and protect them. Of course, you can't hide behind femininity and get away with things.
I think people really want to assume that trans men move through the world the same way as cis men do because it's easier on trans ideology. Because then you can be like, trans men are men, trans women are women, and these kind of simplified slogans that we have to say to like fight for our basic rights in the current climate. But that's not the reality. By and large, trans men don't have the resources that cis men do.
For me to say I'm trans-masc, or I'm not exactly saying I want to be treated like a man. You know, I think we were all agreeing that that's a very simplified way for people to understand transness or gender. I don't want to be treated like a cis man. I really don't. I'm just embodying masculinity in the way that most aligned with me, my soul, my essence, since I was born. Society just reacts to my presence in the way they know how. And oftentimes they put me in that category.
If we look around just at this group, we probably all move through the world pretty differently. Male privilege obviously exists, but it is not conferred universally upon trans men. There's a really big difference between being, for example, a white man who walks through the world and a black man or a man of color who walks through the world. Like, that doesn't confer the same kind of privilege. I go out in the world, I get read as a woman about 40–50% of the time. Okay, I'm not really receiving the male privilege that is getting projected upon me. And even if I did, I'm like a 100-pound Asian man. I had this huge moment where I had grown my hair out and I got catcalled and followed on the street and flashed for the first time. And then the next day I cut my hair and I was like, great, I'm gonna feel safe. I look in the mirror afterwards and I was like, I look like a faggot. Like, I look like a faggot.
Still not safe.
I think that there's a lot of nuance to the way trans men individually move through the world. And you can't really be like, all of them are men and all of them therefore are toxic or have this privilege.
I noticed that like white people perceive me as more masculine, whereas black people, it's like, could just be a stud, you know what I mean?
Right.
They're not just assuming that I'm a man because of like the way I look, which is what I want, by the way.
Right.
I'm in the space where like I acknowledge that sometimes I do have male privilege, but also at the same time, like last week I did get called sweetheart way too many times by like a customer. We move about the world as men sometimes and also as not sometimes.
I think it's really hard for trans men to express anger or frustration without automatically being perceived as aggressive or violent. And on the flip side of that, I feel like there's often emotional neglect that happens with trans masculine people. There have been women who have expressed like, you know, you're too sensitive, or, you know, you need to man up. I think it's like just really, really unfair.
I find that in my experience as a white trans man, more often I feel like there's more of an asterisk put on my identity, whereas like trans men of color will have masculinity weaponized against them. I am in a place of having more privilege, and I do need to acknowledge that, utilize it, and make more space for people's voices to be heard and treated equally.
Wow, this is like the hottest take I've seen, low key, because it's something that's really, I feel, only talked about amongst trans men. I also just feel less likely to be believed if I'm hurt in a scenario. There were times where I feel like my consent was violated, and I'd be like, well, nobody's gonna believe me. And that was like a new feeling and also a pretty scary feeling. So yeah, that was the only one that made me be like, ooh, I have to think real hard. I have to think before I speak.
I think that's the next step of us as a community, at least, to have a conversation. If I want to embody a different type of masculinity, one that's safe, that's steady, that shows up, that is uplifting others, not ego-driven, but communal building, that is gentle, but has solid boundaries.
I have a hot take. These takes are not that hot to me. Maybe the one about like masculinity is weaponized against trans men. That's kind of hot in our community because I feel like that's a taboo thing to talk about, but I don't think it's crazy. I will say you guys did not include my greatest problem dating as a trans man, which is that everyone keeps falling in love with me. And I think maybe we should talk more about that.
My favorite part of the discussion today was definitely just hanging out with a bunch of trans guys. I liked this crew. They were really fun. Have us back. We'll do part 2.
Trans men's experiences are so diverse, which is why it's good that we had a diverse group of people, because it really matters, like, your race, the place you grew up in, your access to hormones. A lot of our stories get told through the lenses of other people. So it's really nice when we can just be like, here is how it is, and bounce ideas off of each other and find more nuanced ways to talk about issues that we face.
I think that it's important that people understand that trans people are not a monolith. It's just nice to see the boys chatting.
We all do have such vastly different experiences, but then when we talk about it, we also find the commonality. Even in the green room, we literally said we are free to talk about it.
How am I coming off in this video? Am I a pillar of this community? Am I a good role model? Maybe not, okay? You know, Rihanna said she never wanted to be a role model, and neither do I.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.